Alright, what is up everybody? This is Alex and Sam, just a snake. Back with another episode of the EOT Newsflash and our Ikoria limited set review. We are on to the red cards. If you haven't already, go back and check out the white, the blue, and the black, and inevitably the green, gold artifacts and lands in the next couple of days. This set looks awesome, full of cats, other adorable creatures that make this one go...
Aww. And snakes.
And snakes. And snakes. If you've not watched one of these before, we are operating on a 4-point scale. The 1s are the cards you should never play. They are dumpster fire, garbage, trash. The 2s are your more generic filler. Most of the cards in your decks will be comprised of this ranking. The 3s are your more powerful commons, your removals. Signpost gold uncommons. And the 4s are the cards that will pull you into a color and really just make your deck explosive. They are the best cards in this set, so the best cards in your colors and in your deck. We also have S for sideboard cards, which you'll bring in if your opponent presents you with a card or threats that you wouldn't be able to deal with normal construction. This is, more niche removal. And your B cards are your build-arounds, the cards that require a deck to be built in a certain way in order for it to be functional. And we also have our awe factor. So if you see this one go, lose your mind over a card, you know it's a winner. Are we ready?
Mm-hmm.
First red card.
Blazing Volley. It is 1 red, sorcery, common. Blazing Volley deals 1 damage to each creature your opponents control.
This card sucks.
Okay.
Contextually, the only thing that I can really see this doing any good with is that that Ambusher, the black one, the 4/2 that comes into play, destroys a creature that already took damage this turn. Mm-hmm. That could do something here, but that's 5 mana. What this is probably more geared for is your sideboard to be brought in against hyper-aggressive decks that have a ton of the 1/1 human tokens. And just use that as sort of a cleanup button for them. Beyond that, this card doesn't really do a whole lot in this format. This is obviously more geared towards standard, more constructed level play. But as it stands for limited, this is not a card you want to be playing. This is a sideboard card, plain and simple, and a very niche one at that. Next up.
Blister Spit Gremlin. It is a 1 red, creature gremlin, common. It's a 1/1. You can pay 1 and tap it. Blister Spit Gremlin deals 1 damage to each opponent. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, untap Blister Spit Gremlin.
The fact that it's spit. We've seen Blister Stick, but never Blister Spit.
Well, he spits out fireballs and it gives you blisters. It's Blister Spit.
I see that. So this card is actually, I think, deceptively powerful. The only downside here is that you have to pay mana to tap it, so there is a finite number of activations per turn. But if you are in a very heavy spell dedicated, probably blue-red deck that has a lot of tempo plays, you could do a good amount of damage with this thing. And if this is your turn 1 play, and from then on out, you're threatening a point of damage every single turn, a flame jab in essence, and the ability to do it multiple times if you've got, let's say, a bounce spell or a counter spell on their instant or whatever, you could get in, I would say, upwards of 6-7 points of damage with this thing, no problem. It won't win you the game, but it will certainly help you get there. So this definitely has a big B build-around component attached to it, but I think once you're there, you're in a solid... probably 1.5, just because you need a lot to go right for this thing to do what it needs to do. And the damage is not all that significant, but still a cool card here. Definitely a build around me, but good in the right deck as a role player. Wow!
Blitz of the Thunder Raptor. It's 1 and a red, instant uncommon. Blitz of the Thunder Raptor deals damage to target creature or planeswalker equal to the number of instant and sorcery cards in your graveyard. If that creature or planeswalker would die this turn, exile it instead.
Thunder. Raptor. Thunder. So, question, are you saying more towards the thunder raptor or the little thing it's chasing? Or both?
Both.
Okay.
Because, I mean, the Thunder thunder raptor thingy is really, really pretty, and the thing is chasing is like, oh no! But it's really cute too. He just wants to give him a hug.
Right.
Or the little thing dropped something, and the thunder raptor's like, hey!
You dropped this. It's in my mouth. Come get it.
No.
This card is pretty nuts. I've never been a huge fan of Planeswalker or creature-specific removal. Typically, I like a burn spell that can go to the face. But at that point, this turns into almost a fireball effect. If you can just stock your graveyard full of instants and sorceries by cycling or just casting them through the natural progression of the game, you could feasibly kill somebody from a very high point of life with this if it could go to the face. As it stands, I do like that this can just kill small creatures in the early game, even big creatures in the late game, so I like the versatility there. That being said, it has a heavy build-around component, much like the Blister Spit Gremlin. So you do have to keep that in mind. So this is going to be a lot harder to pull off in sealed because you have less control over the cards you are getting. But if you're drafting this and you are in a heavy spells deck, blue-white or blue-red or a Jeskai blue-white-red color combination, you're probably in a pretty good spot to take this late in the draft because not many decks will actually want an effect like this. So big build around, probably somewhere in the 2 range though once you do have it online and for a good amount. So cool stuff. Raptor Thunder.
Didn't mean to start that again. Oh. Fritz gives me hugs. Cathartic Reunion, 1 and a red sorcery. It is a common. As an additional cost to cast this spell, discard 2 cards, draw 3 cards.
Yeah, so this is a reprint from Aether Revolts. This was the card that people thought was going to break Modern as well. Spoilers, it kind of did. That being said, this is really good in the mid to late game, or just in the early game. If you've been drawing a bunch of excess lands, or you notice that your creatures won't be as effective against what your opponent's playing, to ditch those away and then give more power to something like Blitz of the Thunder Raptor could be a really good way to get this going. And as I said a lot of times with the blue cards, card advantage is king. So even though this is a card not quite advantage because you are losing 2 to pick up 3, as long as you're casting it in the right spot, you do have the ability to sculpt your hand in a really impactful way. And with enough cards like Blitz, you've got a good way to reap benefit from those cards as well. Or heck, if you can reanimate them as well. So as long as you have things that go with this card, the discard is a lesser negative. But I think so. This is a 1.5. It's a good filler spell. It's good stuff. 3 cards is a lot for 2 mana. Just, the only downside is that if you can't discard 2, you can't cast it.
The soldier had given up his wealth, his title, even his home, but he had no room for regret. At last, he had saved his friend.
Yep, and we'll see this little friend one more time in red. Because the blue version is Capture Sphere, where the human guy's like, oh no!
Oh, yeah.
It tells a story. This is the end of the story.
Aww.
Yeah. Brian Kibler spoiled this one over on Twitter with his dog Shiro, so go check that out. Moving right along.
Ooh.
Talking about thunder.
Clash of Titans. Epic. 3 and 2 red, instant, uncommon. Target creature fights another target creature. Each deals damage equal to its power to the other.
Yeah, I like the "Let the Brutes Fight" is a very it's very evocative of Ken Watanabe's line from Godzilla King of Monsters. Let them fight, and it's a good movie. Good movie. This card, however, I do not understand why it is 5 mana. We have had sorcery speed fight in green for 1 green mana, so I don't know why this has to be 5 mana just to get to instant speed. That being said, if you've got something that that is big enough to take, I get why it's 5 mana. They're titans. You're not like little tiger fighting little monkey. That's a fight. These are behemoths. Yes. 5 mana is a lot though. I'm not high on this one at all. If you need the removal, sure, but you're better off playing other removal spells, I think, in this set. Yeah. Not enthusiastic about this card. I give it a 1.5. Too expensive.
Womp womp.
Womp womp indeed.
No! Cloud Piercer, 4 and a red creature dinosaur. It is a common 5/4 with reach. Whenever this creature mutates, you may discard a card. If you do, draw a card. You can mutate it for 3 and a red.
Yep. I believe this is actually one of the first mutate cards that was previewed, if I'm not mistaken here. So this one's actually pretty good. Baseline stats is more than fine, and reach on a red creature is very rare. I can't count the last time I saw one. Probably never. Don't say that definitively, Alex. Probably never has happened before, but Magic is weird. I like the ability to have the mutate cost obviously be cheaper than the regular casting cost because it is a risk-reward type effect here. The discard then draw is rummaging as opposed to looting, which is a draw then discard. So you do have that downside, but as we've seen, this is kind of the impulsivity of red to generate card advantage. So, most cards like this are perfectly serviceable. This isn't terribly exciting, however, but as we've seen in a lot of recent sets, flyers can really dominate games, and a lot of the other colors don't really have good ways to check those, especially at common. So seeing this pop up in red now, and of course we'll see them in green as well, is pretty cool. So I like this card. It's a solid 2. It has a draw card on it, so the 3 best words of Magic. Next up, we've got one of the finishers in my new Gabi EDH deck.
Dranis Stinger. It's 1 red. Sorry, it's 1 and a red creature, human wizard, common, 2/2. Whenever you cycle another card, Dranis Stinger deals 1 damage to each opponent, and you can cycle it for 1.
Yeah, good stuff here. Obviously, this is... I like that it's a bear. 2-mana 2/2s are always good. In fact, that you can cycle it is always good as well. But if you are in the cycling deck, which is going to be, any combination of colors, really, there just seems to be cycling everywhere. But primarily, this will be a blue-red type deck with obviously a small splash of white. This can do a significant amount of damage because it just sits there. And you're not having to pay any additional mana to get the ping activated, so that's really good as well. And the cheap cycling of 1 is also just icing on the cake. So this is a good role player in your cycling decks. So it's probably somewhere around the 1.5 to 2 range. As I like the fact that as soon as it's no longer viable to attack, it can just sit back and your opponent has to really think, as long as they're cycling, I'm taking damage, and then they have to prioritize a relatively weak threat on the board with removal they might want to save for something a little bit bigger that you might have coming. So, good role player. Oh boy.
Everquill Phoenix. 2 and 2 red creature Phoenix. It is a rare 4/4 with flying. Whenever this creature mutates, create a red artifact token named Feather. Yep.
Yep.
Pay 1, sacrifice Feather, return target Phoenix card from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. You can mutate it for 3 and a red.
Yeah, so this is pretty cool. Typically, whenever we see a Phoenix in Magic, they all have this ability to come back from the graveyard through some shenanigans, whether it's casting lots of spells in your turn, dealing damage to an opponent, and in this case, we're using Mutate to really do something, and the Feather is quite evocative too. It's very on theme here. This is the only Phoenix in the set, so it's not like you're going to be able to get all these other extra Phoenixes unless you're playing like Phoenix Tribal in EDH, which, cool. So I do like the fact that you can put this onto something else, make that whatever it is, flying, and then be able to get this back at some point. It is cool that it then gives itself its own mutate target to continue that chain, so as long as this thing doesn't get exiled, this is a very powerful threat here. It's a little mana intensive to constantly do this, but as the game goes on, this will just continuously beat down. And even though it comes into play tapped, to be able to get it back on your opponent's instep is quite powerful as well. So as long as you have the mana to go with it and the creatures to go on it or it on, yeah, mutate's weird. Very powerful here. So this is a 3.5 for me. Very, very threatening red card indeed.
No. Ferocious Tigerilla. It's so confused.
It's very confused. What am I?
3 and a red creature cat ape. It is a common 4/3. It enters with your choice. Sorry, it enters the battlefield with your choice of a trample counter or a menace counter on it.
And it's a 4/3. Yeah.
Is it that?
I did. Oh, yeah. Sorry. So I've already said it a couple times already. This review set, 4 mana 4/4s or 4 mana 3/3s Hill Giant stats is always playable, and to get a little bit extra power and then the versatility of the trample or menace counter makes this thing a pretty potent threat here. The only downside is that if you have it trampling, it might not be able to get through for a ton of damage very long because of its relatively weak body. So I think more often than not, the menace will be the preferred mode. That being said, if you have any kind of pump spell or trick to go along with this, the trample could just be the best way to go with it as well. So this is a pretty cool card here. This is a solid 2 for me. Very aggressive card, obviously, so your more mid-rangey red decks will probably not want this one as much. But beware the cat tape. Beware the cat tape.
Ooh. All-seeing eye.
Mm-hmm.
Hydra rings. Fire Prophecy. 1 in a red, instant, common. Fire Prophecy deals 3 damage to target creature. You may put a card from your hand on the bottom of your library. If you do, draw a card.
This card is insane.
Yep.
So we've seen Lightning Strike in the past, which is 1 in a red, deal 3 damage to any target. As much as I don't like that this can only go towards creatures, that's not that big of a downside when you're filtering your hand to, it does suck that you won't be seeing that card anytime soon because you're most likely not going to be shuffling your library all that much in this set unless you have access to Evolving Wilds. But that being said, if you've got just a dead card in your hand, be it a land or a creature that's not going to do anything, I am perfectly happy with killing something and getting a card off of this. So this is really cool stuff here. 2.5, somewhere in that range. 3 damage is usually good enough to kill most things, and if it's not enough to kill it by itself, some combat damage will usually get this thing to the where you need it to be. So good card, very cool. Sweet.
Flame Spill. 2 in a red, instant, uncommon. Flame Spill deals 4 damage. 4 damage to target creature. Excess damage is dealt to that creature's controller instead.
Yeah. So this is spell trample. This has never been done in a actual set of Magic, but we saw this in one of the unsets with Mega Death Ray, I think, which was the exact same text through and through. Mm-hmm. So it's cool to see that we're actually doing this in an actual, non-unset, a black bordered set, essentially. 4 damage for 3 mana to a creature is pretty impressive, and I'm happy to use this, on just about anything. I'm not really looking to get the excess damage to go forward. That's okay. But if I do, awesome. This is pretty solid here, but 2.5 for me. Good stuff. Spill. All right.
Look at the toe beans. Footfall Crater. 1 red, enchantment aura, uncommon. Enchant land. Enchanted land has tap. Target creature gains trample and haste until end of turn, or you can cycle it for 1.
Yeah, this is scary. Frankly, scary stuff. The ability to cycle it obviously gives it versatility. We've said that, and we've said that so many times, and we'll say it plenty more times too, I'm sure, in this set. But just the ability to have this as almost like a ticking time bomb, and just every time that you draw a big threat, your opponent has to go, crap, does it cost 1 less mana than or 1 more mana than they have available or whatever? They have to be able to play this, tap this, and just go. And just, there's so many big things in this set that just destroy your opponent. So you do need a little bit of support to go with this. But I think once you've got it in the right deck, I think this is going to be good in sealed and draft just because you've got so many random creatures to go with this. This is good stuff here. So I like this a lot. That being said, it's not going to light the world on fire. It's a 1.5, but can deal a considerable amount of damage very quickly. All right. Are you ready? Mm-hmm. For the start of the story.
Oh, Forbidden Friendship. 1 in a red, sorcery common. Create a 1/1 red dinosaur creature token with haste and a 1/1 white human soldier creature token.
Yeah. Awesome. 2 mana for 2 1/1s is a fantastic rate. We've already seen a couple of cards that require you to sacrifice creatures for removal, things like that. We've seen the Bastion of Remembrance. So this gives you a lot of good fodder for that, and this could be decent in a really aggressive red-white deck or just red deck in general. The haste on the token is pretty good, and this also gives you some decent mutate targets as well. So I like this card. It's not terribly exciting, but it does give you a good bit of versatility for later plays. So this is a 1.5, and the art is just, it's awesome. Next up.
Ooh. Frenzied Raptor, 2 and a red creature dinosaur common. It is a 4/2, and that's it.
That's it, yeah. This is actually a reprint from Ixalan, if I'm not mistaken. Perfectly serviceable creature to beat down with. It won't do a lot because of that low toughness, but I do think that stats alone, this will do a decent amount of damage as the game goes on. All right, and our next card, we've got our next mentor.
Frillscare Mentor, 2 and a red creature human warrior. Whoa, that thing next to her is cool. It's an uncommon 3/2. Or she is. Oops.
Yep.
When Frillscare Mentor enters the battlefield, put a menace counter on a target non-human creature you control. And you can pay 2 and a red and tap it and put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control with menace.
Yikes. This is good stuff here. We saw a lot of menace in black. We've seen a lot in red. So I think this one is probably one of the best ones here because typically we see menace creatures typically relatively small in a lot of cases, but to have them just continuously get bigger and bigger and bigger, you know how hard they are to block. You with your Serpent commander deck, it takes a lot to take down a menace creature. And if it gets to the point where it can just take down 2 things, awesome. So as long as you've got the other menace creatures to go with it, or just the ability to make other menace counters, I think you're in a really good place with this creature here. The Tigerilla thing just gets out of control with this. Very, very cool stuff. This is probably, I call this a 2.5 just because how good Menace is in Limited. The board can only block so much. So very, very cool card here. Solid 2.5.
Admit it, that 0.5 is because I went.
It is. She's right. All right.
Kitty. Go for Blood. 1 and a red sorcery common. Target creature you control fights target creature you don't control. Cycle it for 1.
Yeah. So we just saw Clash of Titans. So why on earth does this exist then for 2 mana? At sorcery speed, I just don't get it. This is obviously the better version of it. If you have to fight at instant speed so badly, sure. But this is plenty good. It's good early. It's good late. You can cycle it. Very, very good stuff here. This is going to be pretty much typical for Red's removal in Limited. So I'm always happy to have a copy or 2 of this as long as I've got the creatures to back it up. So this is a solid 2. And as always, cycle it away to power up that Thunder. Stop now.
Ooh, that's scary. But still cute.
It's still cute.
Heightened Reflexes. 1 red instant common. Target creature gets +1/+0 until end of turn. Put a first strike counter on it.
Awesome. Very, very cool combat trick. Typically, we only see a temporary boost of first strike, and it's usually like +2/+2 or +3/+3. So to see it permanently is very, very cool to give it, extra fodder for mutations later on. Really, really cool stuff here. The bonus isn't all that great, but typically when you are first striking, you are getting to a point in combat where you can take down whatever is blocking you. So no real points taken away from that, but this is still somewhere in the 2 range for me. I'm not super high on aggressive decks in Limited as it is, but for you mono red drafters out there, this will definitely be one to pick up here. So solid 2 for this. The strangest thing she loses her mind over. I don't understand.
It's a hot snake.
Just a snake. Serpent. Serpent, darling. Don't get it crossed. I don't know.
Lava serpent, not snake. It's a 5. Ooh, it's a 5 and a red. Well, now I'm just completely discombobulated. It's
Sorry.
a 5 and a red creature, elemental serpent. It is a common 5/5 with haste, and you can cycle it for 2.
This card's awesome. This card's very good.
Your face is awesome.
It is awesome, thank you. Yeah, this is a great, it's not the most ideal finisher, but in a blue-red deck that has, some good, maybe even black-red that has plenty of removal, or blue-red with plenty of tempo spells to bounce and tap things down, this could easily just clock your opponent for the last 2 points of damage. If you've got the ability to reanimate it, like we saw in black, I can see this being pretty versatile to cycle it away early and then get it back late. And of course, if you have the ability to get cards with cycling back as well, this can do a lot of damage very, very quickly. And that's a pretty hefty body to block as well. So your opponent thinking they're safe in the later games to just, out of nowhere, just, lava axe them. Pretty good stuff. Solid 2, but not that exciting otherwise.
Instead of it being a hot cake, it's a hot snake.
Oh my gosh. Hey, look, it's our first Planeswalker.
Kitty! Luca! Coppercoat Outcast. He is a 3 and a red. Legendary Planeswalker. Luca. He is a mythic.
Yep.
With 5 loyalty.
Yep. Can you read that text?
He does a lot.
He does a lot. Okay, so can you get it?
I can.
Oh, okay, go for it. Yeah.
No,
by all means, go for it.
Okay. Ladies first, right? +1, exile the top 3 cards of your library. Creature cards exiled this way gain. You may cast this card from exile as long as you control a Luca Planeswalker. You can -2 him. Exile target creature you control, then reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal a creature card with higher converted mana cost. Put that card onto the battlefield and the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. You can -7 him. Each creature... Ooh, words. Each creature you control deals damage equal to its power to each opponent.
Yeah, so it's a one-sided fight effect. We've been seeing more and more often green and red just get these busted mythics and planeswalkers that just generate absurd amounts of card advantage. That used to be Blues Jam. Where is our planeswalker for that? We'll get to her. That being said, Luca is ridiculously powerful. I don't want to call this a 4 because there's enough downside to him, but this is a solid 3.5. I'll just break down the abilities really quickly. So to get the top 3 cards, you're running the risk of losing out on lands and non-creatures. That is a significant downside, but if you've got a number of lands in your hand, or if you've got enough in play already, I can see doing that pretty much without worry, especially if my deck is heavily slanted towards creatures. The -2 ability obviously wants to have creatures as well, and if you've built your deck to have a pretty consistent curve, and you're exiling, like a mid-tier creature, like a 4-drop or a 3-drop, and you've got 5s and 6s to go get, or God forbid you're exiling a 5 and you've got a 7 to go and hit. There's a lot Luca can do. There's a really cool standard deck that does tokens into the 8/8 Yadaro trample haster. So pretty cool stuff can be done with Luca. You just need to make sure that your deck is built in a way that it can take advantage of that. And obviously the -7 is basically game over if you have a wide enough board state, because your opponent's creatures do not deal damage back to those creatures you're fighting with. It's basically a one-sided Plague Wind. Super cool card, solid 3.5, but it's got to be built in a very heavy creature deck. Luca, good stuff. And his cat friend. All right.
It's about to pounce. Momentum Rumbler. It is a 3 and a red creature dinosaur, uncommon. It's 3/3, and when it attacks, if it doesn't have first strike, put a first strike counter on it. And whenever it attacks, if it has first strike, it gains double strike until end of turn. That was a lot of words.
Yeah, this thing is pretty wild. So I do not believe that you get the first and the double strike all in the same turn. That's not how this card works. It has to attack once with first strike, and the second time it checks for first strike, and then it gains double strike on its next and subsequent attacks. So this card is pretty nuts. For Hill Giant stats that just gets better and better and better and better, this will take down a considerable amount of the bigger threats in the format. And if you've got any kind of trick to go with this, make it indestructible or anything like that, this is going to take down a lot of things and will very quickly end your opponent. I can see this being really good in aggressive red decks at the top end of their curve, and maybe even more of a mid-rangey green-red, maybe green-black deck that wants you to just beat down and have some removal spells. This is going to be a good piece of that as well. So solid 2.5 for me, I think. All right.
That is a cool card.
It's a very cool card.
Mythos of Vidrock.
Vidrock. The Thunder. Raptor.
2 and 2 red sorcery. It is a rare. Mythos of Vidrock deals 5 damage divided as you choose among any number of target creatures and or planeswalkers. If white-blue was spent to cast this spell until your next turn, those permanents can't attack or block, and their activated abilities can't be activated.
Wow. So, baseline, just for the red mana, this is mediocre at best. It's like a 1.5. You know, obviously, forking damage out is pretty good, so this could take out, you know, I would say if you're just spending red mana, you're probably taking down 2, maybe 3 creatures, depending on what your opponent has. But if you get all the mana for this, so white, blue, red, red, you're going to easily hit 5 things, doesn't matter if you kill them or not, and then just swing in for the kill. This card is absolutely unreal at that level. If it was instant speed, it becomes even more powerful, but I think this is just good. Like, this is a bomb right here. So if you're in mono, if you're in just red, I'm less high on it, but as soon as you're in all 3 Jeskai colors, or you have the ability to splash for the blue or the white, you're going to be really happy when you cast this spell. This is a 3, possibly a 3.5, just because you are going to kill your opponent with this card. This is nuts. Next up.
No! Oh my goodness. It's a porcupine. It's a 3 and a red. Creature bird beast. It's an uncommon 3/4. You can tap it. This creature deals X damage to any target, where X is the number of times this creature has mutated, and you can mutate it for 2 in red.
So, much like the hemorrhage monster in black that drained life for numbers of time mutated, this is the red variant of this. So like I said, that one's going to get you about 6 points of damage, I would say. From mutation, I would say it's something similar to the porcupine as well. Is quite good. You know, hopefully your opponent just doesn't kill the whole stack and you look like a goon. But a 4-mana 3/4 is also very good here as well. I'm a little miffed that this doesn't fly, but seeing this thing with wings would probably send her into fits of hysterics. So thank you, Wizards, for not doing that, if only for my own sanity. Solid 2. Alright, I'm going to need you to hold on to your chair because it gets worse.
It's a lemur monkey porcupine thing. Oh goodness, it is the Prickling Marmoset. It's a 2 and a red creature monkey. It's way more than a monkey. It is a common 2/3 with first strike. Whenever you cycle a card, Prickling Marmoset gets +2/+0 until the end of turn.
Yep. So this card is also quite good as a very aggressive attacker, or defender for that matter, actually. I don't think that you just want to jam this in any deck. This has more of a build-around component than most aggressive first strikers have. Just because your opponent has to really worry about, can you cycle on the attack or the block and have this thing just blow them out. So for that, I do give it a kind of a knock for it, but being a 2/3, getting that sort of lopsided stat wise is certainly a point in its favor for just regular blocking. So this is a solid 2, 1.5 more like I would say. But as soon as you are in the cycling deck and you have consistently the ability to the mana to generate 2 cycle cards, I think you'll get a lot of mileage out of Prickling Marmoset here. Pretty good stuff. All right, I think we're going back to just.
Aww.
Maybe not.
It's so pretty. I like the elementals.
Yes, the elementals are very cool, I have to admit.
Pyroceratops. It is a 3 and a red creature elemental dinosaur. It is a common 2/3 with trample. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, put a +1/+1 counter on Pyroceratops.
Yeah. I always thought wizards were supposed to have owls or one-eyed cats for familiars, but flaming dinosaurs work too. I feel like if I have a wizard, I would have a flaming dinosaur as a companion. Yeah. So this card is actually really cool. I like this a lot. This reminds me of the weird or the red beard from War of the Spark, which had the exact same effect. I don't think it had trample, however. On its own, the stats are pretty solid, but as soon as you start casting any number of combat tricks, counter spells, removal spells, this thing just can get out of control very quickly. And eventually, well, I would say is probably pretty capable of ending a game for you. So any kind of blue-red tempo deck, white-red aggro, green-red aggro, black-red, mid-range. Like this goes in a lot of different shells. This is a very versatile card, I think, here. So for that, I am going to give it a pretty solid ranking. And this is a solid 2.5 for me. I don't think you need to cast more than maybe 2 or 3 spells before this thing just becomes absolutely destructive. And for those blue-red decks that have just a ton of spells, this is a good finisher. Very good finisher. Next up, Raking Claws.
1 and a red instant common. Target creature gains double strike until end of turn. You can cycle it for 2.
How many claws does a monster have? Exactly 1 more than you accounted for. This thing has 5. Good luck. Good grief. It's a fine trick. Aggressive decks will want this, and that's about it. More tempo. So like your white red aggro decks, your green red aggro decks will want this. Yeah, any aggressive deck will want this. Even the blue red sort of cycling tempo decks will want this because you can take advantage of the cycling on this, or just the ability to just play it and have that count towards your instants and sorceries counts from the Thunder Raptor burn spell. So this is pretty versatile here. Like I've said, though, I'm not a huge on, this kind of combat trick in limited. So this is a 1.5 for me. It's not super exciting, but it'll get the job done. Next up.
Reptilian Reflection. That's neat. 2 and a red enchantment, uncommon. Whenever you cycle a card, you may have Reptilian Reflection become a 5/4 dinosaur creature with trample and haste, in addition to its other types, until end of turn!
Clever girl. So I like this. The fact that it has trample, or I'm sorry, with haste, is pretty important here, just because you can play this, cycle a card, and get an attack in. So I like the fact that this can be sort of a trap and also an aggressive beater at the same time. Obviously, it does tap itself if you turn it into a creature, so it's not like the enchantment is permanently untapped. But for those, I do like it both on offense and defense. This is obviously only good in the cycling deck. I just want to jam this into any deck that has a couple of cycling cards. But if you've got anywhere between 7 to 10 cyclers, this becomes a real threat here. So big build around me at that point, and then sits solidly at the 2 spot for you once you have the ability to just consistently cycle and spring it on your opponents because you've got cards in your hand. They don't know what you can do.
That would go really, really well with the 8/8 cycle card.
Yeah.
Because that would give you a beater that turn, and then you could go back and grab that and be like,
bingo. She's got it. All right, let's see what she thinks about this little guy.
Rooting Moloch.
Sure.
4 and a red creature lizard. Okay, that works. It is an uncommon 4/4 When it enters the battlefield, exile target card with the cycling ability from your graveyard. Until the end of your next turn, you may play that card. You can cycle this card for 2.
Yeah, so this is pretty cool here. Obviously, exiling it from your graveyard doesn't mean you need to get it back. You just put it in sort of the exile zone. You can cast it from there. So this is a pretty neat effect. Typically, we've seen this until the end of turn. You may play that card. But we're seeing Wizards move away from that to be more, you may play it until the end of your next turn. Typically, because this thing is so expensive, to be able to not be able to get that effect immediately is a bit of a hindrance. So end of next turn is very, very good here. If you've got any larger cycling threats that you've already discarded to draw, that you can then cast because you have enough mana to do them with, very good stuff like the Nightmare Horror, the 8/8 with Death Touch and black. I'm blanking on the name. All this Void Spawn or something like that is a great example of a card that would be good here. Or just other copies of Rooting Moloch would be pretty solid here as well. This obviously wants to go in the cycling deck, so even then it's not like any mid-range red deck will want this because it's a good body by itself, and if you can get any cycling cards back, which you will probably have 3 to 4 in your average deck just because of the way the set's built, you should have a target for this, and if not, the body's still pretty decent as well. But I do like it in a heavy cycling deck, so I'll give it mostly a B ranking there. But once you have the utility to get back with it, this jumps to like a solid 2 for me. Very good stuff. Next up,
Rumbling Rockslide. Rumbling Rockslide. 3 in a red, sorcery, common, Rumbling Rockslide. Deals damage to target creature equal to the number of lands you control.
Yeah, so this is typical red removal. We've seen this a couple times in the past. On its face, it's a 4 mana, 4 damage spell to a creature, which can kill a majority of things here. Beyond that, it can take down obviously much greater threats. That being said, it can't kill your opponent, so it's kind of underwhelming. So if you need the red removal, I think you're better off playing other things, but you could do worse. This is a solid 1.5. It's unexciting, but it can get the job done. Whoa!
Has an anger.
Jeez.
Sanctuary Smasher.
Or he's just really happy to see you.
This is true.
Like, you come from home, bam!
Him is a happy boy. Sanctuary Smasher, 4 and 2 red, creature Rhino Beast, uncommon, 6/4 with first strike. Cycle it for 2 and a red. When you cycle Sanctuary Smasher, put a first strike counter on target creature you control.
I have to wonder where the line is drawn between Rhino and Beast, and then Rhino Beast. Like, what is... Anyway, this card's pretty good. This is a very good top-end threat for really any red base, or any deck that has red in it. It goes good with the cycling deck, obviously, if you can get it back at some point, like we saw with the Moloch thing. I like this in just any deck that can play it. It's obviously not an aggressive red card, but is a very good finisher that, if you get this thing's trample somehow, game over. So this is pretty solid here. This is a solid 2 for me. I can see the stock going up on this guy significantly. However, this could be a solid 2.5 for me. All right, shredding sales.
Shredded sales.
Shredded sales.
That's why this is my job.
They have been shredded. We are not shredding. It's past tense.
Yep.
Yeah.
1 in a red, instant, common, choose 1. Destroy target artifact. Shredded cells deals 4 damage to target creature with flying, or you can cycle it for 2.
Yeah. So there are not a ton of artifacts in this set that are worth blowing up. There's one legendary one which could be quite problematic, the Uzalith, that we will get to. But just the ability to take out flying creatures is pretty significant. As I mentioned earlier, flyers are typically a pretty big component of any limited format. We saw the Reach Dinosaur, and so I think this is a pretty good complement to go with that. So if you do have a big flying dragon, for instance, or a dinosaur you need to kill, this is a pretty good way to do it. And if you have the ability to destroy a key artifact pretty good as well. And the cycling on this just gives it an extra point that as well. That being said, it's a 1.5 just because it has such narrow use. But when you do get to use it, you're in good shape. All right.
Spell Eater Wolverine. Wow. 2 and a red, creature Wolverine, common, 3/2. Spell Eater. I want to keep saying spellcaster, but it's Spell Eater.
Call whatever it wants, as long as it doesn't eat me.
Spell Eater Wolverine has double strike as long as there are 3 or more instant and or sorcery cards in your graveyard.
Yeah, this thing is, this obviously only goes in like spellslinger decks, like blue-red, potentially black-red if you've got a bunch of removal spells that go with it. I don't see this going into really anything other than that. But once you've got this thing online, this is a pretty significant threat. It will take down most small creatures, and if you've got any pump spells to back this thing up, it will take down very big creatures. That being said, the 3 instants and sorceries is a bit of a hoop to jump through. I can see this thing being online somewhere around turn 5 or 6 if all things go according to plan. And so I don't know how effective this will be at that point in the game. Mileage may vary. It's a solid, this is a solid 1.5 to a 2 for me. The blue-red decks will be able to take advantage of this thing quite well, though. This is a cool card and can be quite scary in the right decks.
That's Luca's kitty. Tentative Connection. 3 and a red, sorcery, common. This spell costs 3 less to cast if you control a creature with menace. Gain control of target creature until end of turn. Untap that creature. It gains haste until end of turn.
He was ordered to kill a threat. He chose to make a friend.
I like Luca.
So this is a pretty cool card. Typically, we've seen this threaten type effect, act of treason, around 3 to 4 mana. We've seen, obviously they had to make this, with this clause on here, making it cost 3 less with menace is pretty cool as well. So I do like that you can get, something back, obviously, for having something already on the board with menace. So I like it in that regard, and if I have the ability to then sacrifice the creature that I have attacked with, or if I got in control of, all the better. The real big brain play would be to untap your own creature that they tapped already for you, like a blue spell, and get them with it. That's the big brain play.
It looks so soft.
It does look very soft, I have to admit. Luca picks good friends.
Yes.
That being said, this is primarily going to be an aggressive card. We've seen menace in black and red for the most part, so that's going to be where this card fits at best. It's a 1.5, and like I said, if you have the ability to sacrifice the creature that you have stolen, all the better. Oh boy.
Unpredictable Cyclone. Didn't see that one coming. It is 3 and 2 red enchantment. It is a rare. If a cycling ability of another non-land card would cause you to draw a card, instead, exile cards from the top of your library until you exile a card that shares a card type with the cycled card. Not sure if you're still following me. I'm not even following you.
I am.
You may cast that card without paying its mana cost. Then put the exiled cards that weren't cast this way on the bottom of your library in a random order, or you can cycle it for 2.
Yeah. So this goes and gets an enchantment when you cycle an enchantment. A creature for a creature, so on and so forth. Yeah, you may cast it. So, okay, yeah. So this is a massive build-around card because there's no guarantee you're going to hit anything that you want. The unpredictability of this is absolutely unreal. No pun intended. Much like Polymorph does to go and get the next creature down from your library when you sacrifice the creature that goes with it. That's effectively what we've got here. So this is a build around me card, but in no way, shape, or form am I playing this unlimited. Like, this is a massive, massive trap. If you think you can, it's fun to play around with it. It's goofy. If you want to do like the meme draft, go for it. That being said, if you are taking your draft seriously or your sealed seriously, do not play this card. It will only backfire. And when it doesn't, it's going to be awesome. And I'll just do this, because I usually do this for everyone in set review. If you somehow win a game off of an unpredictable cyclone, please send me a picture to EOT Newsflash on Twitter, and I will give you 10,000 EOT Newsflash bucks. As always, they have no cash value, but hey, bragging points. So yeah, don't play this card. Moving on.
Weaponize the monsters. Oh yeah. 1 red, enchantment, uncommon. You can pay 2, sacrifice a creature, weaponize the monsters, deals 2 damage to any target.
Yep, pretty good. So this goes really good with threaten effects like we saw, or if you've got anything that's been trapped by a pacifism effect, or the ability to do this to any target just makes this so powerful. Yeah, the 2 activation on it is pretty expensive. There are cheaper versions of this, but they're more expensive to cast, like Goblin Bombardment. That being the case, though, this is still pretty good stuff that, to attack with something and then just fling at your opponent for some damage in a very aggressive red deck, or sacrifice something you've stolen. This has a lot of versatility to it, and so in the right deck, this is a very heavy build-around card. Your hyper-aggressive red decks, your red-black aristocrat-style deck will take advantage of this. So this is a pretty cool card. Heavy build-around, solid 2 once the deck comes together. And I do believe for our last red card...
Turtle!
Big Turtle.
Chill time. Yadaro, Wandering Monster. 5 and 2 red, legendary creature, dinosaur turtle.
Respect.
It is a rare. It is an 8/8 with trample and haste. You can cycle it for 1 in a red. When you cycle Yadaro, Wandering Monster, shuffle it into your library from your graveyard. If you've cycled a card named Yadaro, Wandering Monster 4 or more times this game, put it onto the battlefield from your graveyard instead.
It's so wild. So effectively, you're paying 8 mana or 8 mana to get this thing into play. Mm-hmm. I like that it has haste. This is no Dirtle Turtle. That's damn for sure. I do think that, anytime I have the ability to cycle this, and then, because the fact that you're shuffling it into your library just tells me that you're going to be cycling a lot with this deck, and eventually you're going to find it. So, you've really got, 2 paths to walk here. Either play it on 7. Oh, it's 7 mana, yeah. Play it on 7, beat down with it, or cycle it in the early game and just continuously draw cards. And hopefully you're in a deck that has more cycling with it, probably like a blue-red deck most likely, to constantly cycle your library, find it again, cycle Yadaro as many times as you possibly can until it comes out, and then just whoomph, beat down with this guy. This is a really cool card here. It does have a bit of a build around just because you do have to cycle it consistently, and you're not guaranteed to hit it every time, but that's magic. But once this thing does what it does, this is going to end games very quickly, and so I'm going to give this a 2.5. Very powerful card here. No Dirtle Turtle. And that is the end of our red cards. Hope you've enjoyed watching this. Let us know down in the comments what your favorite red cards in this set are, and don't forget to go back and check out the white, the blue, and the black set reviews so far. We'll be knocking out the green, gold artifacts and lands very, very soon, so be on the lookout for that. Ikoria is already up and running on Arena, which I currently can't get into because it's checking for updates. But as soon as we're able to do that, I'm going to be drafting the heck out of this set. It looks super fun, and I cannot wait to play it. So for Sam, it's just a snake.
I personally want to know if anybody else lost it completely over Porky Parrot. But...
Oh, yeah. If you lost over Porky Parrot, down in the comments, please let us know. What is your favorite cute card in this set as well? I'd love to know that as well. So definitely let us know in the comments. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, ring the bell, self-aggrandizing done. We'll see everybody later. Have a great evening.